They say space is silent, but anyone who has ever worked inside NASA will tell you it's not silence, it's pressure, a constant heavy feeling that something is always being hidden in the dark. The story begins with an engineer named Evan Lorne, who worked inside the Johnson Space Center video pipeline team, the people responsible for cleaning, stabilizing, and checking the live stream footage from the International Space Station. Most of the footage the public sees is delayed by 20 seconds, not for technical reasons, for screening. Evan's job was simple: remove glitches, blur classified objects, cut anomalies. But one day, something came through the feed that didn't fit any category he had ever seen. It happened at 03:11 a.m. The ISS was drifting over the Pacific, passing into Earth's shadow. The live feed went dim, normal. The stars vanished, normal. But then, something blocked the faint light reflecting off the station's solar panels. A shape massive, slow and silent. At first, Evan thought it was a loose panel or maybe a drifting piece of debris. But debris does not move like that. It doesn't change direction deliberately. It doesn't pace the ISS at matching speed. And it certainly doesn't cast a shadow larger than the station itself. NASA protocol says, if an unidentified object enters frame, cut the feed. Evan reached for the switch, but the footage froze. Not because of tech failure, but because someone else, higher up, had already cut it. A full override. Then came the message on his internal console. Stand by. Do not archive. That was unusual. Every cut had to be archived. It was policy. This one wasn't allowed. Evan waited. The shadow continued moving, except now it wasn't just moving past the ISS. It was moving around it, circling, hunting. Its shape made no sense. It wasn't round, wasn't angular. It was fluid, like a thick fog, but dense enough to block starlight. A darkness with edges. The ISS external sensors began flashing low-level proximity alerts, yet the crew inside reported nothing. But the feed continued on Evan's screen, even though the public only saw the technical difficulties message. Then the shape stretched, as if reacting to the station's lights. This isn't right, Evan whispered to himself. Because the darkness didn't behave like an object. It behaved like something alive, and then a ripple moved through the black mass. One ripple turned into many, like the thing was adjusting, shifting, observing. It pressed closer to the station, so close that the solar arrays briefly vanished into its silhouette. Then, a faint glow appeared inside the shadow. Not a light, not an eye, more like a spark, a flicker of something reacting to the environment. Evan leaned toward the monitor. Another message popped up. Delete immediately, but he didn't. He saved it to an external drive, slipped it into his pocket, and walked out. That was the moment the trouble began. Because within 3 hours, NASA security was reviewing access logs. Within 6 hours, Evan's keycard was disabled. By noon, his apartment was entered without a warrant. By evening, he received a phone call from an unknown agency. Return the file. There is no shadow. There was no event. He hung up. That night, while reviewing the footage frame by frame, he noticed something he missed earlier. Inside the shadow, for just 6 frames, were stars. But the stars were warped, bent. Like space itself wasn't behaving normally. This wasn't debris. This wasn't a craft. This wasn't a creature. It was a distortion, a hole, a region where light didn't act the way it should, a gravitational anomaly. But something else was hidden inside those 6 frames. A second shadow, smaller, faster, moving independently, as if 2 things were there, watching, waiting, and then the footage abruptly ended. Not because the clip was corrupted, but because a second feed, likely internal only, had overridden the recording. Evan realized he hadn't just captured something mysterious. He had captured something he was never meant to see. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. And something NASA didn't want the world to know. Shadows in space don't move. Not unless something is making them move. That night, Evan vanished just like that. No records, no forwarding address, no resignation letter. His co-workers were told he retired due to illness. His family was told he took a new job overseas. His apartment was emptied within hours. But the external drive, it wasn't taken. Evan had hidden it behind a hollow wall panel. And years later, that drive appeared online, uploaded anonymously. And inside, there was one final file, a short note, typed in fear. It wasn't a shadow, it was looking back. And here's where the story gets even stranger. Right after the shadow passed behind the ISS, NASA's public live stream began to pixelate, frame by frame. Not like normal compression, but like someone was scrambling something in real time. For 3 seconds, the audio caught a voice saying, "It's not debris, it's back again." Then the feed cut. When the live stream returned, the earth below the station looked different. The cloud patterns had shifted too quickly for the time that passed. Viewers immediately noticed. Thousands began screen recording, comparing the frames. That's when people realized something unbelievable. The shadow changed shape depending on the angle of sunlight. At one point, it stretched long and thin, almost like wings. At another, it became a compact oval, as if rotating. And whatever it was massive. Something that size should have shown up on every public space tracking database. It didn't. Astronomers on Reddit tried to calculate its speed based on the timestamp of the ISS orbit. It was moving faster than anything humans have ever launched into space. Then a NASA employee posted anonymously, "We see these all the time. They're not ours, that's all I can say." The post was deleted in minutes. Even stranger, the official archive of that live stream cut from NASA's public database like it never existed. But viewers have clips, screenshots, recordings, and they all show the same thing. A silent, enormous, perfectly black shadow drifting behind the ISS, without a single star visible through it. Like something solid was blocking the light, something watching us. After the missing footage incident, people started digging into older ISS archives, and that's when a pattern appeared. Every time astronauts performed spacewalks on the night side of Earth, the video quality mysteriously degraded. Not randomly, but in the same exact section of orbit. A thin slice of Earth's shadow where NASA always lost signal. But one night, the signal didn't fully cut. Instead, the cameras caught something they were never supposed to. A faint outline. A curved surface. Like a gigantic hull reflecting the tiniest bit of sunlight. Just a perfectly smooth, dark surface, as if space itself had shape. The object wasn't drifting, it was holding position. That's the part scientists can't explain. Nothing that size should be able to stay motionless relative to the ISS. Not without propulsion, not without an energy signature. But there it was, motionless, like a whale in the deep ocean watching a diver. One astronaut, years after retiring, spoke quietly about something they saw during a spacewalk. It was darker than space, and it knew we were there. He never clarified what he meant by "knew," but others reported hearing metallic knocks from outside the station. As if someone, or something, touched the hull intentionally, because the knocks didn't happen when the station changed temperature. They happened only when the ISS moved into the same orbital region where the shadow had appeared. And then people noticed something new in the amateur recordings. When the shadow passed, the ISS lights flickered. Not all at once, but in a wave, traveling from one module to another. Like something was scanning the station. One engineer leaked a message. "That part of space isn't empty." He refused to elaborate. His account disappeared within hours. And now the biggest question people ask isn't what the shadow was, but why it was so close to the ISS. Objects that large don't follow the ISS orbit. Objects that large don't move silently, block stars, and scan the station, unless they're observing something. Or waiting for something, and that's the part NASA won't talk about. After the leaked files spread across niche forums, a group of independent radio astronomers decided to track the ISS shadow themselves. They pointed small but powerful arrays toward the exact orbital corridor where the anomaly kept appearing. What they found didn't match anything in orbital catalogs. Space is normally filled with background noise, cosmic radiation, solar interference, leftover radio chatter. But in that region, the noise dropped to absolute zero, a perfect silence. Not natural silence, artificial silence, like something was absorbing the signals. Space doesn't behave like that. One scientist commented anonymously, "It's like pointing a microphone at a crowd and hearing nothing. Something is removing the sound." Meanwhile, the ISS crew reported a new phenomenon, the airlock sensors triggered by shadows where no objects were detected. Light sensors flickered, proximity alarms went off. The cameras saw nothing, almost nothing, because during one night cycle, a camera caught a shape, just for a single frame, a curve, smooth, reflective in a way that didn't match metal. Almost like a lens looking inward. Engineers who reviewed the footage said the reflection patterns indicated the object was not absorbing light. It was bending it, like a gravity distortion. But to create a bend that strong, the object would have to be massive, bigger than anything humans had ever launched. One astronaut later admitted they were instructed to avoid looking directly at the anomaly during spacewalks. Imagine that. Floating above Earth at 28,000 km/h, knowing something enormous is there, just outside your field of vision. And then something else started happening. The ISS cameras began glitching in ways NASA had no explanation for. Frame drops that formed symbols. Not letters, not numbers. Shapes, curved lines intersecting at impossible angles. Patterns that repeated only when the shadow was near. Experts looking at these patterns said they resembled deep-sea animal communication, the kind used by whales to signal presence in dark waters. But this wasn't the ocean. This was low Earth orbit. And then came the final sign. During a routine transmission to ground control, the audio cut off, replaced by a low vibration. A hum, almost melodic. It lasted 8 seconds. Every astronaut on board heard it echo through the station's structure. Not through their headsets. It vibrated the rails, the walls, the floor, like something outside was resonating the entire ISS. When the hum stopped, all systems returned to normal. NASA blamed solar activity, but the solar logs didn't show anything, and the shadow didn't appear again for months. Not because it disappeared, but because the ISS orbital path was quietly adjusted. Not publicly, not officially, but just enough to avoid that region of space entirely. As if NASA knew exactly where the shadow was waiting, and wanted to stay away from it. After the orbit adjustment, the ISS crew expected things to return to normal. They were wrong. One night cycle, as the Earth slipped into darkness below them, the ISS exterior thermal sensors detected a sudden temperature drop, a perfect ring of cold circling the station like something was moving around it, without touching it. Cold doesn't behave like that in space. Cold doesn't move, not unless something is carrying it. Inside the cupola module, an astronaut stared out into the void, looking for an explanation. Then something shifted. The stars in a small patch of sky drifted. Not moved, warped, as if space itself was bending and reshaping the starlight. The shadow was back, but this time it wasn't behind the ISS. It was around it, a faint outline. Not visible directly, but detectable by the way the stars vanished behind it, like a massive shape blocking light, yet revealing no details. Picture a giant object, perfectly matte, like a void cut out of existence, something else. And then the strangest thing happened. All exterior cameras pointed toward the anomaly, rotated by themselves. Not mechanically, not because a command was sent. They just tilted, like they were being guided. One engineer reviewing the footage later said, "The cameras didn't move to the object. They moved as if the object wanted to be seen, at the angle it chose." The resulting footage lasted only 3 seconds before emergency overrides shut the whole array down. In those 3 seconds, crews saw a curved edge, a faint ripple through the ISS hull, like a soft tap from something unimaginably large and unbelievably gentle. Sensors recorded it as a micro-vibration, but astronauts described it differently. It felt like contact, like something acknowledging we were here. Hours later, ground control sent a coded message to the ISS. Do not attempt visual confirmation. Do not respond to unidentified external stimuli. But here's where things became disturbing. The message wasn't written in standard NASA formatting. It used a tone more similar to classified DoD warnings, and the sender ID trace didn't match any known NASA terminal. It was as if someone, or something else, had access to the communications line. The shadow didn't attack, it didn't collide. It just stayed there, hovering, observing every orbit, every night cycle, always at the same distance, like it was matching the ISS trajectory perfectly. And then, at the peak of its proximity, astronauts reported something impossible. For a split second, interior LED lights dimmed, not from power loss, but from external interference. Almost like a massive electromagnetic field passed through the station. What did it do? What did it scan? Because moments later, the shadow vanished. Not by drifting away, not by accelerating, as if it had never been there at all. But the ISS logs tell a different story. Because the day after its disappearance, crew members began experiencing the same dreams, drifting through endless darkness, and a sense of being watched, not with eyes, but with awareness itself. And then, on Earth, NASA scientists noticed something far stranger. A tiny gravitational anomaly, exactly in the region where the shadow used to follow the ISS. Just a presence, a signature of something enormous, that had left behind a footprint in space-time. And so the question became, if the ISS saw the shadow, What saw the ISS? NASA called it a gravitational anomaly. The astronauts called it the weight of something that isn't there. But one scientist, Dr. Olivia Glass, called it something else entirely. A residual presence. She wasn't talking metaphorically. 1. The data. Nobody was supposed to see. During routine system sweeps, Dr. Glass found a micro spike in the ISS telemetry logs, a 0.004 deviation in the station's rotational stability, insignificant. Impossible, but paired with the gravitational anomaly, it was the signature of something with mass, not visible, not metallic, not a ship as we understand them. Mass without matter, a disturbance, without a source, the kind theorists warn about in papers that never get published. Her report lasted 3 minutes before NASA security flagged the file and removed it from her access. 2 minutes later, her login was revoked. "This is classified now," the automated notice said. But the file had already been copied. Not by Dr. Glass, by someone else inside NASA. Someone who left behind a message she found in an untagged directory. "You're not the only one who saw it." 2. Astronauts begin to change. 3 astronauts who had been awake during the shadow encounter were placed into private debriefing. He refused to answer questions, repeating only one phrase. "You didn't feel it. You didn't feel it touch the hull." Psychological evaluation concluded he wasn't hallucinating. He was remembering. His resting heart rate skyrocketed every time anyone said the word shadow. But the strangest symptom was shared among all 3 astronauts. Time distortion. Not physically, mentally. Each of them described experiencing skipped seconds. Just a jump, like one moment ended and the next began too early, and every one of them described the exact same experience. During the shadow's closest pass, time felt like it stuttered, like a frame missing from a video. Like reality hiccuped, NASA banned them from speaking publicly. 3. The object appears somewhere else. 2 weeks later, a private satellite company, AstralSight, picked up a distortion near geostationary orbit, a tear, a smear in star patterns lasting no more than 4 seconds. AstralSight engineers thought it was a sensor failure, until one pointed out something chilling. The distortion moved in the exact same arc the ISS had described, same absence of light, like the shadow had simply relocated. But this time it wasn't drifting, waiting. Audio NASA tried to hide, then came the recording. A NASA comms tech leaked it anonymously. It was a fragment of ISS audio from the night the shadow vanished. A faint echo, metal creaking, but from the outside, like something massive brushing the station hull. Then something even more unsettling, a low-frequency hum that lasted 1.8 seconds. Scientists who analyzed it said it matched no known mechanical resonance. But it matched something else, earthquake precursor waves, the kind that come from pressure building inside Earth's crust. But this one came from space, meaning whatever created it was exerting force, applying pressure to see what would happen. The disappearance. Nobody can explain after the leak, the shadow anomaly stopped appearing entirely, not fading, not drifting away, just gone. But Earth-based telescopes began catching something far more disturbing. A trail. A path stretching thousands of kilometers, almost invisible unless processed through edge detection filters. It resembled something moving in enormous arcs through space, something leaving a wake. NASA calls them light shear artifacts. But one astronomer said it plainly. It's not a shadow. It's not an object, it's an intelligence. And it's moving with purpose. And then the dreams started again. One by one, ISS crew members, past and present, reported new dreams. A curved surface, silent, and this time, in the dream, they weren't floating in space, as if the surface itself was endless, stretching farther than their minds could comprehend. Just the surface, and a feeling. Something beneath them was stirring. Not alive in the organic sense, a presence older than planets, and then the message. The same message shared by multiple dreamers. We found you. NASA denied everything, but denial doesn't stop a phenomenon. Not when it follows you, not when it learns. Within days of the astronauts' recurring dreams, the phenomenon changed again. This time it started appearing where it shouldn't be possible, on Earth-based sensors. It began faint, a smear in radio spectrums, intermittent noise inside deep space radar channels, false returns that shouldn't exist. At first, analysts blamed solar interference, until one tech, Andrea Lee, noticed something chilling. Every glitch occurred at the same timestamp. 2:13:07 UTC down to the millisecond. A compression of space-time, a microscopic fold, just like the one detected near the ISS, but stronger. The astronaut who finally broke, Commander Eli Mercer, had been stable for weeks. He woke one night screaming, clawing at his arms, insisting something was under the skin. When doctors checked, they found nothing physically wrong, but Commander Mercer kept repeating a phrase with shaking hands. It was on the hull. Now it's on us. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He described a presence that imprinted on anyone who witnessed it. Listening.NASA removed him from public access permanently. The first ground encounter. Then came the radar anomaly over the South Pacific. A U.S. Space Force station detected a gigantic distortion forming several hundred kilometers above the ocean. The same signature recorded during the ISS event, multiplied by a factor of 10. Space-time bending around it, stars warping behind it, as if something massive was approaching, without moving. When it reached the upper atmosphere, sensors froze, then died. But one camera, a privately owned Japanese weather satellite, captured 4 frames before going offline. Frame 1, clouds spiraling downward. Frame 2, the atmosphere bending like glass pushed inward. Frame 3, a shadow descending, but not from above and from behind the sky. Frame 4, total black. Minutes later, all distortion vanished. It wasn't entering the atmosphere, it was testing it. Testing how thin the boundary was, how easily it could press through. The astronauts realized the truth. The surviving ISS crew members were reunited for a final debrief. They didn't need to see it, because every one of them said the same words when the pulse hit that day. It's moving closer. They didn't mean physically, they meant cognitively. The presence wasn't traveling through space. It was aligning, 2 realities brushing together. 2 layers of existence beginning to merge their edges. A consciousness that is not bound by distance. NASA eventually shut down all data related to the anomaly under Project Nox 11. Every whistleblower disappeared, every leak vanished, every trace scrubbed, but one file escaped deletion, one audio fragment, the final message transmitted from the ISS before NASA cut the feed forever. Static, metal creaking. A low hum rising, then a voice. Not human, not electronic. A layered whisper. You are not alone in the dark. Then silence. When analysts enhanced the waveform, they found something impossible. A secondary voice beneath the whisper. A reversed echo, a mirror message. Played forward, it said, "We were here first." The shadow never returned to the ISS. It didn't need to. Because now, it knew where we were, and it knew we could see it.